Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Dakbo Adigboyi, and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. Let's begin in North America, where a federal jury has convicted Hunter Biden on all three federal felony gun charges he faced, concluding that he violated laws meant to prevent drug addicts from owning firearms. The 54-year-old son of the President, Joe Biden, was convicted on all three of the federal charges facing him. A historic first criminal prosecution of the child of a sitting U.S. president. The conviction marks the first time a president's immediate family member has been found guilty of a crime during their father's term in office, though his crimes predated Joe Biden's tenure as president. Hunter Biden could face up to 25 years in prison and a fine of up to $750,000 at sentencing, though he is likely will receive far less than the maximum as the first-time offender. Now, for more on this, I am joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, can you give us some insight into what we have at the moment concerning this case?
Well, yes, this historic first prosecution of the son of a sitting president involved Mr. Biden, that's Hunter Biden, pleading not guilty to felony charges that included lying about his addiction when he filled out a government screening form for a revolver, and he illegally had that revolver for 11 days. Now, the rules are that if you are a drug addict and using drugs, you cannot buy a gun, but he lied on that form, so he could buy a gun. Now, this trial included testimony from Hunter Biden's ex-wife, who gave accounts of his spiraling addiction in the weeks before and during and after him having this gun. Now, prosecutors were showed text message, photos and bank records which showed that Hunter Biden was deep in the throes of this addiction when he purchased the gun. Now, Hunter Biden's lawyers sought to show that he wasn't using drugs at the time and that he bought the gun, that he didn't intend to deceive, as he didn't consider himself a drug user at that point. Hunter Biden's daughter, Naomi, testified actually in the case that her father seemed to be doing well and that she saw him before and after he bought the gun, and she still testified that he was doing well. However, the prosecution disagreed, hence these charges being, hence him being convicted of these charges leveled against him.
Now, how has the president reacted to the verdict?
Well, this has clearly taken a toll on all the family. Dr. Jill Biden, Joe Biden's wife, was in court for most of the days of this trial. She was in court today, but the president has said that he is also a dad, and in referring to his son said, "I'm proud of the man he is today." He went on to say, "So many families have had loved ones battle addiction and understand the feeling of pride seeing someone you love come out the other side and be so strong and resilient in recovery." And he said that Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with love and support. Nothing will ever change that.
All right. Now, how much of an impact do you also think this will have on the president's campaign?
Well, this is definitely a body blow for President Joe Biden. It won't derail his campaign by any means, but it's not something that he would want and not something that he wants to deal with at this stage in the campaign. At the heart of this is a story about loss, about grief and about addiction when it comes to Hunter Biden. You've got the politics and the drama of this first family playing out in a court, which of course Joe Biden would never want. And the thing is, you had with the Donald Trump case, him being told that, he is not above the law. And so this had to apply to Hunter Biden also. There was a stage where we thought that Hunter Biden might take a plea deal for this and another case of tax evasion that he could be tried for later on in the year, that he is going to be tried for, sorry. It was thought that he could take a plea deal, but no prosecutor said that he is not above the law. Same with President Donald Trump. Now, when it comes to Donald Trump, Republicans could say that this, again, is a body blow for President Joe Biden. It makes him look bad, but it also puts pay to their argument that prosecutors are just after Donald Trump because he's Republican. But Hunter Biden, of course, son of the president, is a Democrat. And so it does show, actually, that the American justice system is working, that Democrat or Republican, you are not above the law, and if you've done something wrong, prosecutors will come after you.
Just before I let you go, Afia, now you made mention of Donald Trump in all of this. Something is pretty much peculiar, with these cases. The current president, his son, has been convicted and also found guilty of some charges, the same with Donald Trump. Some will say it's pivotal in America's political history. What does this reflect of the American judicial system?
Well, like I said, it proves that the American judicial system is working. It doesn't matter if you come from a powerful family or if you were the former president, you will be convicted of a crime by a jury of your peers if they so see fit. It shows that nobody is above the system and nobody is exempt. That, if you do something wrong, then the American judicial system will start working, the wheels will start turning, and that you will be convicted of that crime. Like I said, there was thoughts that maybe Hunter Biden could take a plea deal in this case, but prosecutors said no. That, if anybody else, Joe Blogs, had put an X on that form, had been addicted to drugs, was a drug user, and lied on a form to get a gun, he would be up for prosecution. So the same has to apply to you. So yes, it shows that the American judicial system, we'd like to think, is fair in some way, but is working. That's the main thing.
All right, thank you so much for your time on the news, Afia. Let's move to Europe, where the United Kingdom Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged to take bold action if he secures a re-election in the upcoming polls scheduled for July 4th. Addressing the unveiling of the Conservative Party's manifesto at Silverstone, the iconic venue of the British Formula One Grand Prix, Sunak emphasized his commitment to further tax cuts in the years ahead. He warned against the opposition Labour Party's agenda, stating that they would increase taxes for everyone.
If I'm Prime Minister, you will have this bold action. All you've got from the Labour Party is a blank sheet of paper. Not a single big idea that has been put on the table in this election campaign so far. Right, when the first announcement we made, a new form of national service, which has completely energized conversations everywhere across the country. And yes, not everyone will necessarily agree with it, but no one can deny that it is not bold action that can transform our country, and I think transform our country for the better. And as Conservatives, we believe that hard work shouldn't be taxed twice. That's unfair. That's why Jeremy has been cutting national insurance contributions that only workers are forced to pay. Our national insurance tax cuts are already worth £900 to the average worker. And we will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027, we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker. The only thing that is certain about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party is that they're going to put up everyone's taxes, and they're going to put them up by £2,000, and I'm going to fight very hard till the last day of this election campaign so that that doesn't happen. But I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live.
Laurent Wauquiez, president of the Wagner-Rhône-Alpes region and members of the Left Republican Party, has firmly ruled out any alliances or arrangements following a call by LR President Eric Ciotti for a partnership with a far-right national rally. This announcement by the president, made during a televised interview, marks the first instance in modern French political history where a leader of a traditional party has supported an alliance with the far-right RN. President Emmanuel Macron announced legislative elections for June 30th, with a second round on July 7th, in a bold move following the RN's strong performance on recent EU polls, where they secured more than double the votes of Macron's centrist alliance. With less than 3 weeks until the first round, Macron is contending with potential alliances forming on both the right and left, raising concerns that his political gamble could have unintended consequences.
Bien sûr, je vois tous ceux qui sont en train de s'agiter pour faire des coalitions, pour faire des alliances, pour faire des petites combinaisons. Je le dis tout de suite, je n'y crois pas. Ça n'a jamais été ma façon de faire de la politique. Je crois à la politique qui est faite dans la clarté, en défendant ses idées. Parfois on convainc, parfois on ne convainc pas, mais on ne trahit jamais. On est dans un moment qui est tout à la fois très important et très difficile pour la vie de notre pays. Tout le monde voit ce qui est en train de devenir la politique. Avec le résultat des élections européennes, la dissolution, le risque d'effondrement de nos institutions. Mais plus encore que ça. Je suis frappé, après avoir pris une période de retrait, de voir le niveau d'abaissement dans lequel est maintenant la politique. Avec une politique du buzz, un niveau de politique qui est de plus en plus déconnecté des réalités du terrain. Et je suis convaincu qu'on aura besoin, demain, de cette parole indépendante. C'est pour cette indépendance que je me suis toujours battu au cours des dernières années. Et je suis convaincu que dans ce qui est devant nous, avec l'Assemblée nationale, avec le chaos potentiel qui se présage, il y aura besoin aussi d'un pôle de stabilité.
Polish President Andrzej Duda has declared the Russia-NATO pact dead, asserting that Moscow has de facto broken the agreement. Now, speaking at a meeting of NATO's eastern flank countries in preparation for the upcoming alliance summit in Washington, President Duda emphasized that Russia's repeated violations have nullified the pact, rendering any attempts to revisit it pointless.
Latvijas valsts prezidentam.
Vēlreiz sveicināti godātie mediju pārstāvi, formāta koordinātori un dibinātāji par atbalstu samita organizēšanā. Es arī gribu teikt lielu paldies.
Szanowny Panie Sekretarzu Generalny Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckiego, Szanowni Państwo, przede wszystkim, które tradycyjnie poprzedza szczyt Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckiego.
NATO has implemented the largest reinforcement to our collective defense in a generation.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a stark warning on Tuesday about the growing threat of pro-Russian rhetoric to EU nations. This is as he embarks on a diplomatic tour to bolster support for Kyiv's ongoing battle against Russia, highlighting the increasing challenges Kyiv faces in securing international backing as members of Germany's far-right AfD and the far-right PSW parties boycotted Zelensky's address to the German parliament. These parties made significant gains in Sunday's EU elections. Now, the AfD outperformed all three parties in Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition, with the BSF, a new party campaigning against arms deliveries to Ukraine, garnered just over 6% of the vote. Zelensky emphasized that the stance of these pro-Kremlin parties presents a threat extending beyond Ukraine, potentially impacting the entire EU.
Здається, що найголовніше при виборі, мені так розуміється, щоб люди не обирали просто проросійські популістичні гасла. Мені здається, що це небезпечно, тому що це небезпечно не для України. Ми і так знаходимося в найнебезпечнішій ситуації. Ми в війні. А проросійські радикальні гасла небезпечні для ваших країн.
An unknown person has shot and killed a local city Zaporizhzhia official outside a high-rise apartment building. Sergei Valenko, head of Zaporizhzhia Crime Investigation Department, says the assailant fired 4 shots at the victim. There have been several assassinations of Russian-installed officials in occupied areas of Ukraine. which Moscow has blamed on Kyiv's security services.
Особу місцевого мешканця, який є посадовою особою з Запорізької міської ради, у якого було вогнепальне поранення виявлено. Першочергово ми слідчо-оперативним та заходами встановлено, що невідома особа вчинила 4 постріли в потерпілого, після чого скрилася з місця вчинення злочину. Потерпілого було доставлено до 5-ї міської лікарні, де під час надання необхідної медичної допомоги потерпілий помер. На даний час проводяться необхідні слідчі розшукові дії, спрямовані на встановлення свідків вчинення кримінального правопорушення, а також...
Let's go on a quick break. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. Let's give you some update on the crisis in the Middle East. The United Nations expressed deep concern on Tuesday over the civilian casualties resulting from Israel's recent operation to rescue 4 hostages in Gaza and condemned the continued captivity of individuals by Palestinian armed groups. The United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights indicated that actions by both Israeli and Palestinian parties could potentially constitute war crimes. During a press conference, the United Nations Rights Office spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence highlighted the significant impact on civilians in the Al-Nawrat over the weekend during the Israeli forces' mission to free the hostages. The Israeli military conducted an operation in the region's refugee camp on Saturday, successfully rescuing 4 Israeli hostages. According to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, the operation resulted in at least 274 Palestinian deaths and 698 injuries.
We are profoundly shocked at the impact on civilians of the Israeli forces' operation in Al-Nazarat at the weekend to secure the release of 4 hostages. Hundreds of Palestinians, many of them civilians, were reportedly killed and injured. The manner in which the raid was conducted in such a densely populated area seriously calls into question whether the principles of distinction, proportionality and precaution as set out under the laws of war were respected by the Israeli forces. Our office is also deeply distressed that Palestinian armed groups continue to hold many hostages, most of them civilians, which is prohibited by international humanitarian law. Furthermore, by holding hostages in such densely populated areas, the armed groups doing so are putting the lives of Palestinian civilians as well as the hostages themselves.
In the Middle East, at an emergency summit at Gaza's humanitarian crisis held on Tuesday, global leaders called for greater aid access to the war-ravaged territory and endorsed a U.S. proposed ceasefire as the only viable long-term solution. The summit, hosted by Jordan on the Dead Sea coast, brought together leaders from around the world amidst warnings from aid groups about the deteriorating conditions in Gaza. With over 2 million residents relying on intermittent aid deliveries, the situation is reported to be dire. Martin Griffiths, United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator, described the conflict in Gaza as a strain on humanity and called for $2.5 billion to address the humanitarian needs of Gazans from April through December. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed his support for a ceasefire plan proposed by the United States President. The plan involves Israel withdrawing from Gaza's population centers and Hamas releasing hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners.
My friends, the international humanitarian response in Gaza has been severely lacking, with the delivery of aid facing obstacles at every level. Humanitarian access cannot wait for a ceasefire and cannot be subject to the political agendas of any party.
إن مسؤولية ما يعيشه قطاع غزة من أزمة إنسانية غير مسبوقة تقع مباشرة على الجانب الإسرائيلي، وهي نتاج متعمد لحرب انتقامية تدميرية. ضد القطاع وأبنائه وبنيته التحتية ومنظومته الطبية يتم فيها استخدام سلاح التجويع والحصار.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced on Tuesday that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reaffirmed his commitment to a Gaza ceasefire proposal during a meeting in Jerusalem. The meeting, held late on Monday, saw President Joe Biden present a three-phase plan aimed at ending the conflict, freeing all hostages, and reconstructing the devastated Palestinian territory without Hamas in power. On the same evening, Hamas expressed its welcome for the United Nations Security Council's resolution backing the ceasefire plan. However, the Palestinian militant group, currently engaged in intense fighting with Israeli forces in Gaza, insisted that its demands be met, including a permanent ceasefire and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from the territory.
Mr. Gallant and other senior Israelis this morning. And I think there is a strong consensus, again, behind moving forward with the proposal. But it really is down to one person at this point. We'll see what comes from them.
In the meantime, dozens of protesters gathered outside the hotel where U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was meeting with opposition leader Yair Lapid in Tel Aviv on Tuesday. The demonstrators urged Blinken to press the Israeli government to accept a ceasefire deal and secure the release of hostages held in Gaza since October 7th.
Blinken came, he's been here multiple times, he shook our hand, he spoke to us, he reassured us that they're doing everything possible, and our message to him was that we have to bring home every single hostage.
And we call upon them to exert as much force as possible, as much pressure as possible on both sides to end this situation as soon as possible. Right now it's our only hope. The government of Israel has forsaken the hostages and so many times. We need some, responsible adult to come and make some sense, knock some sense inside the situation.
זו המשימה העליונה של החברה הישראלית. עד שהם לא יחזרו הביתה, לא נדע מנוחה, וחשוב שהאמריקאים מבינים את זה.
And that's a wrap on the news at this time. And of course, don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us across socials. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live across these platforms: DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Dakbo at Digboyi. Bye for now.